think first of all, I need to tell you how I got started with this. I have been nominated through centuries of people to be our family historian. Things I can share with you, some things I can't share with you because they stay in the family. And some things you probably don't want to know. So I started out with this searching for cemeteries, because most of you cemeteries that have the enslaved people in there, the only marker they have is a rock. And I got to thinking, how sad is that there's no name, nothing but a rock. So I made it my duty to go around trying to find the enslaved cemeteries in our area, whatever, and I found some. I even found the grave of my 5th great-grandmother, the rock, which was exciting. But I knew a name that went with that. But all the others, there was no name. So I'm going, how can I bring attention to this? And it worked on my mind. And I started reading articles about things that were going on in Charleston, South Carolina. And I read about where the common everyday thing is to have fingerprints in the brick. So when we talk about fingerprints in the brick, during the cooling process, it's where somebody gripped the brick and left their fingerprints. So I'm going, how cool is that Charleston, South Carolina has those? Field trip. At that time, my wife was not into what I do. So field trip was in my mind. So the light bulb went off one day and, okay, handmade bricks. They're all around. Why don't I look in our area before I go to Charleston? So that's how I got started. Daniel mentioned Derek Orr with the Octagon House, and I was determined I was going to find some fingerprints. So I got in touch with Derek. We had been to Gatlinburg. The wife had had surgery, and she's the type of person, if you don't get her out of the house, she's going to be doing something. So got her out of the house, and I got in touch with Derek while we were down there. We had never met, talked with each other. And I told him, I want to come to your house, if you don't mind, and look for fingerprints. And he said, I don't mind, because I don't want to go on properties and nobody know I'm coming, and I'm going looking at brick, because that's probably not good. And there's a few out there that have no trespassing. And I asked the daughter, how long will I be in jail if I trespass? Because I want to go look at this. So I got in touch with Derek, and on our way back, stopped at the house, and I was talking to him about the brick. And he said, well, we have some. I said, do you really? He said, yeah. He said, there was a class here some years back touring the facility, and a little 2nd grade girl asked him, what was those fingerprints? I said, whoa, okay, let's go. So he showed them to me, and that was my first experience touching the fingerprints. And I always figured, and I'm thinking, these fingerprints belong to somebody, and this was a child. We went around the house and found many more. So that's how I got started with it. So the more I looked, the more I was finding. So I went all over the area looking for them. And I'd write it up on Facebook, whatever, where I'd be in and what I'd found. And some people were interested and some were not. But it was history in this. You know, somebody who touched something and nobody, there's no name, no nothing. But I looked at it as, wow, somebody left an autograph. And it's taken 200-300 years for somebody to come along and see their autograph, but somebody saw it. So that inspired me that much more. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about it. We'll go through, as you see what I say there, but you see the fingerprint there above my thumb. That would be a male fingerprint. And really surprising, I found more children prints than anything, because they had to be the ones to carry the brick, you know, back and forth. So it's tremendous. So as I was going around, I would read stories about places with handmade brick. So there's a church in Whitville area. And I always tell this, if you heard me tell it before, sorry, you'll hear it again here. So asked the wife to go with me, going to look for fingerprints. She wasn't on board at that time. So get to the church. She stays in the car. Okay, fine. Okay, I'll go look myself. And I get to the side of the church and 3 perfect prints. And I'm elated. I'm just beside myself because I have found some fingerprints that somebody left. So I do my little thing. I go around the whole church, and I've been back since, and I found some more, but I was so thrilled that day. And I get back to the car, and I'm doing my little thing. I said, guess what? She said, you found some fingerprints. I said, well, how'd you know? She said, you've down there acting stupid. All this stuff that you were doing, glad nobody was here. So that got me, again, more encouraged. There's a whole lot in between, but we have a time thing, so I'm going to move a little forward here. So one day in particular, she had gone on a girls' trip, which means I got free time. So I read about R.J. Reynolds' house in Patrick County. I thought R.J. Reynolds was in North Carolina, but the house was made of handmade bricks, and they had a slave cemetery there, so I'm going. So hopped on my motorcycle, rode there that day, and I'm looking. So I found some prints on the house and went over and visited the cemetery. They actually have a few tombstones of people who are actually born and died enslaved, but they had a tombstone, which is rare, but they had a tombstone. So I went home that day, and I had this feeling that I got to go to Emory and Henry College at the time. It's university now, I know. So I'm going, and I knew the houses there had been built with handmade brick, and they had been made on site. Now keep in mind that whenever handmade bricks were used, somewhere around they had to make them, which was close to the area. So at Emory and Henry, where the football field is, that area, that's where they made the brick. So I'm going to Bristol, not Bristol, but to Abingdon, Glade Springs, wherever I'm going to look at the house. And I got to the house, and you got to keep in mind, this can be tedious. You're not just going to do this. You have to look at each brick. You have to, if you're really into it. So if people are going by you, sometimes they don't know what you're doing. So I'm there doing my little thing, and I hadn't found any yet, and a lady comes out, because I went to the door and I knocked on it, rang the doorbell first, nobody came. Knocked on the door, nobody came. So I said, well, if I'm trespassing, they can only put me in college police somewhere. So, So a lady comes out of the building, and she says, well, what are you doing? Okay, well, here's an opportunity to talk about it. And as I was talking to her, I saw 3 perfect prints. And I told her what I was doing. So she went in the house, and another lady comes out. And this lady, some of you may know, Monica Hull. I think I pronounced her name right. Quirky little something that she is. And she is that. So I showed her what I was doing, and she was fascinated. I said, I'm really weird with this thing. She said, well, I'm a weirdo too, so we're good. I said, I'm really weird with this thing. She said, well, I'm a weirdo too, so we're good. So she said, we're going to stay in touch. So she gave me her card. Okay, well, I didn't hear anything from anybody or anything like that, but she called me one day, and she said that Cardinal News heard about what you did. No, let me go back a little bit. She asked me to come and speak to the alumni. So I came, and we were going to go look for prints. So we talked with the alumni. We found, which is really rare, others found, there's a few bricks on which house is it? Stewart House, Stewart French House. 5 fingers on them. Really rare. And everybody was excited. I'm excited, whatever. And like I said, I thought that was going to be the end of it. Then she called me, and she said a lady named Carolyn Wilson with Cardinal News wanted to get in touch with me because her boss, whatever, told her that's a story she better get on. Okay, well, that's nice. So Carolyn called. She interviewed me over the phone. Great, okay. Yeah, so I went on Cardinal News, not look every day. I don't see me on there nowhere, but okay, all right. So wasn't really thinking, and I pulled up Cardinal News, and I saw Carroll County man searches for fingerprints. but there was no picture. And I'm from Carroll County. I'm going, how is somebody in Carroll County looking for fingerprints and I don't know them? Then I pulled it up and there was my picture. Okay. So that's when it all really got started. I've gotten calls from California. I've gotten calls from Philadelphia. I've gotten calls from South Carolina. A man from Philadelphia sent me pictures of fingerprints on his sidewalk and asked me, were they fingerprints? Yes. So it took off from there, and people started contacting me because they were fascinated at how few people knew about fingerprints in the brick. And I consider it history. So they called me from the Wilderness Club, whatever, in Dublin, and we went to if you go to New Bern, the jail that was built there has numerous fingerprints, and we talked about it after. So it caught on from there. That's one of the things that it caught on from. And it's really great when they'll send you a message that children, that's one of the main things that they want to see now and talk about is the fingerprints in these homes in Giles County and places like that. They take their classes and they said they're not interested in anything other than when you talk about the fingerprints. Oh, okay. I love that. A man named, I just forgot his name, Zeb Gray from Montpelier, got in touch with me, and he was an interpreter there. He said, why don't you come to Montpelier? And this will be something you can put on your resume. He said, I like looking for fingerprints too, and we have some. Okay. Well, Zeb went as far to tell me that he has had one of the vice presidents for a personal tour, which we got a personal tour. My wife and my daughter and my son-in-law who passed away just a couple of weeks ago, we went. So we walk on the property, and there was a little feeling that I don't think anybody would, I can't explain it, that hit, but it's like, whoa, okay, we're going to go. So we went down, and I talked to some of the people there and asked, how can we bring interest into this? We want kids to come. We want anybody to come to feature part of our history because this is part of our history. And we talked, and he said, well, what we're going to do is when we get through talking is we're going to have a contest. And there's going to be a present for who finds the most fingerprints. So there was 6 or 7 of us out there. Now, remember, Miss Don't Like This was with me, and with the rest of us. And we found so many. We even found a brick with some initials on it. Just, whoa, wow, like this. So we finished up, and he says, well, the present that I'm going to give, he went and got a T-shirt that I wanted, and gave it to my wife who found the most fingerprints. I had to buy the shirt. Has she wore the shirt? No. So that's how we got started into this. And we talked about, and one of the things I want to bring out is when you talk about the people who were enslaved, I went to Monticello, and I had read that they have fingerprints at Monticello. Dropped the grandkids off at their home. I had a whole free day. Wife gone again on girl trip. So I stopped there, and it'd been years since my daughters, they were small. You could go through, well, we could go through at this time. So I know they're there somewhere. So I had an hour in between the tour to go back in. Okay. So I am circling this house. I am doing my little thing, and I can't find them. So a lady's working in the flower garden, and I asked her, I said, can you help me? She said, what's that, sir? I said, I'm looking for the fingerprints of the enslaved in the brick. She said, I can help you, sir, but we refer to them as impressions. I said, well, take me to the impressions then, okay. But she did take me, and I'd overlooked them. And I always tell people, just because I don't see them doesn't mean they're not there. They're there. So I am beside myself. They're all in a cluster. So we started on our tour. Yeah, I've seen this before. I'm not going to say I was bored because I love history and I'm getting to see it again. That's all fine. We're going through the house and I'm not hearing a whole lot. They have a Sally Hemings tour. Now, don't get me wrong. Sally Hemings is a great story. We have one in our own family, but what about those that work further down the hill that have no names, that are buried with a rock? That's who I'm interested in. Nothing against Sally Hemings at all. Well, it's a lovely story if you want to. You get into your Jefferson and Madison stuff. So we're going through the house. We get outside the house and I go, whoa, okay. So I read stories about the enslaved there that were working on building UVA. Thomas Jefferson had a telescope where he could see. And one of the things they talked about, they said, old master's out there watching us, making sure we work. That was a big conversation with the enslaved people because they felt like they had to do what they had to do because he was watching them. I know that's just what was passed on. Okay, so we're still outside, and I'm going, he's not mentioning fingerprints. He said, we have a Sally Hemings tour. You all need to take that. I'm going, nobody's mentioning fingerprints. What can I do? So we were out there and we were getting close to them, and I'm going, how can I, for lack of a better word, diplomatically do this without being so forward or whatever? So I went back to my school days. He said, yes, sir. And I said, your fingerprints that are here at the house, I said, are they located all over the house? Are they in one spot? He says, they're in one spot and they're over there. I said, no, sir, they're over here. He said, thank you for pointing that out. Okay. I felt the little tap on my shoulder, and it was a lady. She said, do you mind if I ask you what you're talking about? I said, oh, no, not at all. So I'm telling her I said, why don't I just take you over here and show you what I'm talking about? It was just not far away at all. She said, would you? I said, yeah. So we start walking, and I look around, and there's 6 or 7 more that have come from the group with me to go talk about the fingerprints in the brick. And I explained what they were and how they, you have to keep in mind that all fingerprints, you consider that if you have too many, and the slave owners would see this, they would make them redo this stuff. So they're strategically put in places from time to time. There are those that are, not strategically, but most of the time where you enter in or a window or something like that, that's where it's going to be because you're going to have, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to bypass it for 200-300 years. Never pay any attention to it. So we talked about it and went back to the group and we finished up, and one of the ladies comes, she says, that's the type of history that needs to be taught. We need to bring this stuff out. Now, I can't help what went on, but we need to tell all of the history of these people that all they had to do, not all they had to do, but their job was to make the brick and build the homes, buildings, or whatever. But we don't think about that. When somebody said, well, Thomas Jefferson built Monticello, I have no gray area. Man, he worked hard to build that house. But he didn't really build the house. So we need to give credit where credit is due when people building homes. So after that one, there's other places I've been, and I can tell you that no matter how many times I touch the fingerprints, it's all the same. It just is so thrilling to be able to touch the fingerprints. Went to some churches and things. Churches are places that you have so many. We went to a church in Marion, and I had spoke to the Smith County Historical Society, and I didn't know he was a preacher, but he came up to me after I got through talking. He says, I think I know where there might be some. He said, can I have one of your cards? Yeah, sure. So we left that day going to the beach for our family vacation. We had been down there a day, and he calls me and sends some pictures. He said, I think I've got some. I said, yeah, yes you do. I said, just as soon as we get home, I'm coming. He said, I think I've got some. I said, yeah, yes you do. I said, just as soon as we get home, I'm coming. So just as soon as we got home, we were coming. So we went to the church, and he'd only found the ones around the door where you enter in. There are probably 100 or more fingerprints in this church. So he said, and it really stuck with me, he said, it was spiritual for me. I went, whoa, I like that. It was spiritual. I said, I understand what you're talking about. Yeah, okay. So they invited me to come to their homecoming at this old church. They don't use it anymore, and it's built in 1839, whatever, and really hadn't been touched. They don't even have bathrooms there. So, but that's where they had their homecoming. He said, will you come, and I'm going to talk about fingerprints in my message, and you explain to the church. And he said, after we get through, I'm going to give people a little piece of, as many as they want, blue tape, and they put it wherever they find a fingerprint. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, we started afterwards, and everybody was looking and having fun and whatever. And a little girl about 8 years old, she said, come here. Can you come here for a minute? I said, yeah. She takes me around there, and she puts her fingers in them. She said, they fit. I said, because it was a child. And she said, oh, okay. Yeah. But as we were looking through there, and if you go to any of these sites, and Daniel's aware of this, and I'm sure some of the others are too, check into the mortar. Because in the mortar, but people who own the homes or whatever would write the history in the mortar. And we found some at the church that day, couldn't make it out. We've been to other places where when somebody in the family dies or anything like that. So that's something to keep in mind if you ever go looking. And I'm going to tell this one more thing, and I'll show you some pictures here. They asked me to come to the shot tower to talk about the shot tower. We knew it was built by the enslaved. They actually have names, first names of the enslaved that built it. So they asked me, would I speak to the kids while we talked to them? Yeah, okay. So I come and I'm sitting there in my truck and I'm going, all this is nothing but big rock. Wouldn't it be nice if you could touch something beside the rock with this being made? That light bulb that went off a few years back went off again. Check the mortar. So when you go to these places, if you check the mortar, you'll see where they try to smooth it with their thumb or finger, and they'll push it up like this sometimes, and there's your print. So, okay, so there's history that nobody knows. What I hope that when we get through tonight that you'll go out and tell people about this and look for them, because people do not realize, and I went to a home in Rocky Mount. They asked me to come and but be the MC for their NAAC program, and they wanted to incorporate what I did in the program. Okay, well, we got through that, and they had 2 places because nobody was aware of anything about fingerprints in all of Rocky Mount, Franklin County. So we went to this home that the owners graciously, and they're renovating it, opened up to us. And, I've become a big softy in my older days anyway. And we were there, and it was a small group, but we were going around the house, and the first ones we found, there was a lady. She was putting her finger in the fingerprints and the tears were rolling. She said, I'll make sure this is known. I'll make sure people, and I'm thinking, I don't need to see this stuff. No, wait a minute. Okay. But they had quite a few. And the lady actually sent me some porcelain, a bottle, and a part of a vase that they had dug up outside where their kitchen had been. Oh, thank you so much for that. So bringing awareness to this. We went to a house a building that was a store off of Main Street in Rocky Mount, full of fingerprints. So people have ridden by all these years, millions, thousands of people, and these fingerprints are silently just waiting on somebody to come and look at me. So let me show you some pictures here so you'll be aware. That, like I said, that's me talking there. You've heard enough of me talking already. But so we'll go on here. Where am I pointing this at here? Oh, no, let's go back. Go back. Here we go. Okay. Different types of fingerprints. Okay, you see the faint one on this side here. Okay, if you look here, you see 3. Here's 3. Now, up to your upper left is a footprint. And this is at Appomattox. And Zeb called me one day and he said, you need to go to Appomattox and get them excited about fingerprints. Field trip, okay. So he said, and I've read about the footprint there. So we're going. We made a weekend trip, the wife and I. We're going to hit there, then we're going to hit Poplar Forest. So the story that goes behind the footprint is when the owner was having the house built, he sent his daughter down to where they were making the brick and had her put her footprint in and put it on the building. You know, okay, but wouldn't you think that probably that was a mistake and somebody had to come up with the reason it was there, or we had to refix it? Yeah, but it's there, and if you ever go to the tavern at Appomattox, that's to your left under the window. If you go right under the window, you'll find fingerprints. Okay, we are in Harper's Ferry, someplace I wanted to go. You can see me, that's a position right there now. Like I said, I have been some places. We were in Williamsburg, and we were supposed to go walking. I'm not going walking. I'm going to look for fingerprints. So my wife was in her world. When we went there, I'm leaned over looking, and I felt somebody behind me doing the same thing I'm doing. And I looked around. She said, "What are we looking for?" I said, "Okay." So I told her fingerprints, and we looked for fingerprints. But this is at Harper's Ferry. And you can see from my daughter where she's got her finger. Are you going to pay attention to that if you're just looking? There it is. And you can look at some of the others here. And like I said, you have to get down and really look at it. And what was really cool about being at Harper's Ferry, we were there looking at them, and a man and his wife came by, and we got to talk to them about them. They were not aware of fingerprints. And this was a black couple and their children. So I'm not making this a color thing or whatever. We all need to be looking for these fingerprints. But if you don't know about them, then, you know, if somebody don't tell you about them, all right, here we are. Some of the places I've been. That's it in Fort Chiswell, the, what do they call it?
Mansion.
So on I'll show you something in a minute. I went around this whole house and it was for sale. So I asked to make sure I wasn't trespassing, and I said, well, if I act like I'm buying this place, I can look at it. So, but on the sidewalk as you go in, 3 perfect prints, but they're all around the house also. This is Montpelier here, and the slave quarters is to the right. And Montpelier was built in 3 stages, started in 1700 and ended in 1800. So you've got numerous prints. Octagon House on the corner, you know, I've heard me talk about it there, and they're renovating now. Monticello. Now, let me tell you, I'm a photographer, or I think I am. Have to have the perfect picture. The little pond there, you know, that's where they put fish in, so Thomas Jefferson could have fresh fish. I'm there, and you see those little things there, I'm getting that perfect picture, and I stumble over one of them things. And the guy, there's a little bench there, he grabbed me. So I didn't get to swim with what used to be fish or whatever there, but that's how I got that picture there. Let's go to the next one here. Okay, this is us at Emory and Henry. See, they're pointing at some whatever, and the glare off my head almost ruined the picture, but it's okay. But that was when we went down, and actually the girl in the purple is my neighbor, because she loves to hear me talk about fingerprints, so she came all the way from Woodlawn to Emory just to hear me talk about them. But there we are, pointing away. Hear me talk about them, but there we are, pointing away. This picture's another one. We'll just go on. This is at Montpelier, as you can see there. And like I said, you have to really be looking for them. Now, this is at Montpelier, and this is a little, I can't call it a statue or whatever, but all of these bricks are from handmade bricks that this is made of. And when you go into one of the slave quarters, it's there on display, and it talks about it. But it fascinated me that somebody took the time to make that. What's that? Let's see, my daughter works there as an interpreter, so thank you for that. You know, I appreciate that. But all of those are from the handmade brick. This is in Fredericksburg. And this is a slave block. And it's in a museum now. They took it away from the corner that it was on. But you see these strange how the prints are in Fredericksburg. It's as if it's just, let's get a little light, put it on there. Let's go to my next one here. You can see those three right there. And this is at Thomas Jefferson's Monticello here. That's just some of them there. Now, like I said, all those at Monticello are in a cluster. So you got children, you got female and male, all in a cluster. You can see how dominant these are. Two prints there. And when you're looking at them, we'll talk about it. I've got a couple of bricks here that we'll show you when we get through. You can see where there was that little push. Now, can you imagine knowing, now I'm sure there's some that didn't know, but knowing that these prints are going to go on a house somewhere, don't you think they probably had somebody watching for them, going, nobody's looking, put that brick in now. Put it in there, and we'll go on about our business. Think about that, how they would, form the area where they're going to put it. I'm thinking that somebody was always looking out, and you didn't want to put too many somewhere. This is the Andrew Johnston house in Giles County. If you ever get a chance to go there, it is full of them. But what happens also, you see the light that's on there, and you can see the print that's up there. If you have a flashlight with you and you shine it on a certain angle, you can see those that you would never pay attention to. And that was shown to me when I went there that day, because I knew where some were and I had found those. And the curator there, he said, you mind if I show you something? No. So he gets his flashlight out and he shows me these prints that natural eye can't see, but the light will bring it out. Fantastic place to go. Here we are again. Are they all alike? No, they're not all alike. And when you feel a print, you'll feel that smoothness in there. And it'll let you know that you got one. Here's some more. And like I said, you really got to be looking. Once you see them, you can't unsee them.
You have to train your eye.
You have to train your eye. Once you see them, you can't unsee them. No, you don't want to see that one. Goodness gracious. No, let's go to another one. This is on the sidewalk in Fort Chiswell. Perfect. And that's the house, and you're going right in the middle area there where the prints are. Like I said, I'm walking around like I'm buying this place on that day just in case somebody comes around.
Excuse me, can I interject something here?
Sure.
Are you familiar with this brother?
No.
You have a brother that moved west to Nashville, became mayor of Nashville. He built Carnton Plantation.
Okay.
Carnton.
Okay.
The house was used during the Battle of Franklin
Okay.
as a hospital. So if you're ever down in Franklin, you might want to check Carnton.
Thank you. Thank you. I heard it. Somebody write that down too, because I'll have every name in the world. Heck, right. And these are the three prints that at the church in Whitville. Like I said, I found some since finding those, but that's the three that you'll see. Again, as we said earlier, if you don't know what you're looking for, All right, come with me. Here we go. This is R.J. Reynolds' home. Nice and quaint. And what I found fascinating about that is, if you go this way is where the slave cemetery is, where they could keep an eye on, and the cemetery could see, There is a home that's in Charleston, and I don't know if you all know the history of it, but the man was buried standing up because he wanted to watch his slaves. And it was something like $3,000 a night Airbnb not too long ago. So I won't be going anytime soon, but I know where it is. This is a home that was in Blacksburg, and Virginia Tech owns it. So if you can see over there in the corner, that was the smokehouse that was left, and they're trying to restore it. But this home was full of them. And like I said, it's owned by Virginia Tech. And let me see what I got on here next. And you've seen that one before. That's one of them there. You see it's similar to some of the others too. Now, if you were looking, you can see, because it's blown up, you can see those two right there that jump out at you. Let's go to the next one. Now, this is a primitive Baptist church, and you see when it was established in St. Clair Bottom, which is Smith County. And there's the church itself. The fingerprints are over on the left side. And that's some of the more prominent ones there that just jump out at you. Just, and there's more there, but I was in a hurry that day. I've got to go back. Now, this was the church I was talking about. See all the blue places that they put down where they have found the prints, and we would go with them and show them others that they maybe had passed by. But Reverend Jim Bangle said when he went up the steps, he said, because I listened to what you said, and I looked, and you see over on the left beside the door, he said that's the first ones that jumped out at him. And he said it just put him in another dimension. Okay. I'm trying to get through these. You can see up, you would think these two bottom ones are, but you go up above them and you see the smooth. So when you feel into there, you're going to feel rough in there. That's not fingerprints. It's just, bad spots in the brick. But like I said, once you know what you're looking for, this was a home in Rocky Mount that we got to go look. Funny thing about this house was built by, I don't remember his name, for his daughter. And in between his daughter's house and his house, which was just up the street, they have a shrine that the hedges there were shipped in from England. Most of the time when you see these big tall hedges at these old homes, they were shipped in from England. So you can go inside these bushes over there, but that was where she buried her dog. So they've got a bench inside of there, whatever. I don't need to go sit and wait for no dog to come that's been dead for 200 or 300 years, but I'm glad you did that. But that's just part of the time. It's they enshrined the pet there. Okay, all righty, that's nice that you did that. This is what I was talking about earlier. You see the rock that's around, but they tried to put brick in. Now, of course, it's smaller. This makes it bigger. But you see where the thumb was pushed, right there, pushed into. There's your thumbprint. Push it in there so it'll level it out, smooth it out a little bit. And I'm seeing that more often now that I know to look for it. This was the old store. Now you see it's a main thoroughfare there. Most of them were there on the right. There were some on the front, but on the right, that's where most of the fingerprints were. Like I said, Franklin County had never heard of fingerprints that I know of. They told me that they had never heard of them. And it was exciting for me to have people excited and bringing their children, and we're all looking for fingerprints. It was really, really a fun thing. Check these out. How many you see there? There you are. And look how small they are. And this was at the house there in Franklin County. And this was at the house there in Franklin County. That's, like I said, there's your one right there. You see where we are on this one right here. There in the corner there. So like I said, if you don't, we said earlier, and I keep repeating myself, but if you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to overlook it. And I do know that, is it Martha Washington? It's not Martha Washington Ian anymore. Martha Washington does have fingerprints because we've gone there. So I was excited about that one because I'd been somewhere to speak that day. I'm stopping in Abingdon and I'm going in and I'm talk to them, let them know what I'm doing so that nobody's coming out here watching me. But they do have some. And if you go through the main door, if you go to the left near the window over there, you'll find some there. Again, look how small. Went through the little town of Buchanan, and I saw the sign that said that this was a historical whatever, skid marks in the road. Because I knew these were handmade bricks, and I didn't look for long, but right in front, your print's right up there. When you see it in a smaller version, you can really get to see the feel of it. Okay, what did I do? Okay, this one means something to me. This home, and I'm going to tell you about that cow too. This home was my great-great-grandmother who was enslaved there. She had 7 kids, and 3 were by her master. We got to go to the home. And the guy who owns the home asked, he said, we got there that day, he said, don't y'all want to go inside and look? Yeah. So after I started looking for fingerprints, and I called him, and he said, you can come anytime you want to. You don't have to call. Just make sure you lock the gate behind you so the cows won't get out. So I had started in the back, and I went around the house. Now, I did find some. And I get to this corner. So that's the only corner that I didn't get, because I don't know what cows are thinking. And to be truthful, I'm afraid of cows. So she had the baby cow, which you can't see right there. So I got brave there at one moment, and I took a couple of steps like I'm gonna scare that cow, and the cow goes, come on. I got to go back sometime to check this area out, because I don't know what that cow's thinking. This is in Grayson County. Great.
What's he gonna do with the house?
He was trying to renovate it, but I think they ran into more money than what they really needed to, and there hadn't anything been done to it for a few years now. Okay. I got you. Okay. No problem. There's some more here. This is just something I like to talk about, and you can, it's a reminder. I'll just read it out to you. Fingerprints are reminders of how far we have come and how far we still have to go. They hold the past in the present. All the blood, sweat, and tears that went into building all of these different foundations are a physical example of wealth, but also sorrow displayed all over the world. Once you see them, you can't unsee them. My goal is to speak for those people and tell about their experience. That's what I like to leave with you, if okay, I think that was it. Inside. Thank you. Any questions?
Don't be surprised if you come through Bristol someday and you see a bunch of people there.
Oh, I'll stop. Yes, sir.
You mentioned you'd been in Abington. Did you go to the Field Spin House or the Porter? Tell me. And I asked because they were the brick owners. They were the owners of the brickyards.
Oh,
That house was really big.
I'm telling her to write that down there, because when I was in Abington, it was rush.
His house is the tourism office.
Oh,
If there are some found, it'll be a real good book there for them and for you.
okay.
The second question is, do you ever get up to the Hill Store?
Only this way. Only that way. I've had people say that maybe we'll get a ladder someday. We can go look when nobody's really come through with it. I'm not as stable as I used to be, so I'm sticking down here. If it's above there, I'm probably not going to see it, but
You mentioned they came in groups. You'd see a group patterns in particular. Did you mention the particular reason for that? Was that because the head boss had moved away and everybody started his own?
and I call them clusters. Usually when you find a cluster, they're behind planted bushes. So the bush hides these things. So you have to go behind the bush. There's a house in Marion. You're not going to see them unless you look behind the bush. So it's like you said, let's get all we can in here, but it'll be hidden until somebody.
And they did it on purpose.
Yeah, they did it on purpose, and you'll find some that they didn't do it on purpose. It's just getting the brick and picking it up. But those on purpose, you'll see, they usually really jump out at you. You can tell. I think I can tell, let's put it that way. Because you have some faint ones that are on there, but those that are really, when you put your finger in it, you feel it. That's deliberately put on here. Because like I said, you have to remember that in Virginia, it was against the law to teach slaves to read and write and whatever. So I can't write my name, but I'm gonna leave a fingerprint. So hopefully somebody will see that. Any more? Anybody?
So, is anybody doing published research on this or any university?
I'm hoping so. I'm putting this out there to everybody who can and will. And when like going to Emory, that worked out really well because they were doing the Watershed project at the time, and they have names, but not last names, but they have quite a few names there. So my hope is that someday somebody will really research, because wouldn't it be really cool if you knew this was probably one of your relatives? That you could go put your finger in the fingerprints. And that's why I put it out there. I like to hopefully go back and see that people are doing something with this. And they are. I hear people talking about it or whatever. But really getting into research, and like Emory is such a small area, they can find out stuff easily because, the enslaved lived around and helped build it and worked there and whatever. So it would be easy. And some people don't want to really talk about it. And when I say that, I'm going to give you an example of Montpelier. One of the descendants there, they traced her great, however many greats, working in the kitchen for James Madison. I'm thinking, wow, how cool is that? Not cool that you were a slave, but you got to work and they traced it back to this. The relative will not go into the house because she said it will bring back too many memories for her. I have trouble with that because if I knew it was my relative, they'd have to come and drag me out because I want to feel this history. So a lot of people don't want to talk about it because, that's where I come in. Let's talk about it. Let's actually have fun looking for fingerprints. Let's talk about this. Bring it out so people can come. If somebody comes to your facility and you have some, wouldn't it be nice? Guess what we've got out here also? And there's history that goes with that. So, like I said, when I put it out there, that's all I can do. Just put it out there and run my mouth wherever I go.
So, I'll stand up. Sure. So, as a result of your work, how are organizations taking this story and taking these narratives and sharing it with others?
The smaller place that I've been, and I'll go back to the place in Newbern outside of Dublin. Now, when they have their tours, part of their tour is featuring the fingerprints and the history that goes behind it. So that's a plus. That's a real plus. Derek at the Octagon House has implemented talking about the fingerprints. That's part of their history now. They're bringing it out. So it's there and it's happening, but it's a slow process because very few people know about the fingerprints. So when I talk to you and you feel the urge to go look for them, we're good. So when I talk to you and you feel the urge to go look for them, we're good. We're good. And tell people about, they're there. Find out who built them. Find out who the person, brick mason was, or whoever that taught the slaves how to make the brick. Because you also had people that traveled, that built the churches and whatever. They would build it and they would go to another one. They didn't stay. They would travel. You had your little group, but then you had others that you're like Monticello. Your enslaved people, Jefferson's enslaved people, built Monticello. So we got to keep that in mind too. So, anybody else?
Why haven't you written a book?
Well, I have been asked that, and actually, you all are part of my experiment today too. I've only done this twice now. because I figured that people need to see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to hopefully write a book about all of my exploits and where I've been, how to get to these places, and where the fingerprints are. So that's hopefully in the making real soon. We'll go from there. So.
So were you able to find out by
You're right. He's got here, thanks.
find out why they refer to them as impressions rather than fingerprints?
Because it sounds better. It sounds better. You know, we want to talk about Mr. Jefferson and all the things that went on. We don't really want to talk about these fingerprints. So they evidently have told them, if somebody asks, they are impressions. It didn't impress me, but go ahead.
So I know that most of your work has been like in Abingdon and kind of north. And this is your first time talking to us here in Bristol. So as a historical association, what would be like a next step for us to explore what you share with us?
Find your homes that have been built pre-Civil War, of course, and handmade brick, and then go from there. And bring as many people into it as you can. And put it out there and make this a fun type event and teach history. That's where we fall. We want to disguise. It's just like impressions. It's such a disguise. You know, they're fingerprints from the enslaved. Why am I going to go talk to? I'm showing y'all impressions. Look at this impression. No. We need to stop sugarcoating things and leave them as they are and teach. Teach as they are and open up the whole, you know, there's a whole lot of young people that have no clue. No clue. So that's how I would go about it. Research. When I went to Franklin County, they researched and found houses in the building for us to go to. They researched. We do have some that old because they didn't really, nobody had bought that out.
I'd like to ask Daniel if he's found these impressions his.
Well, we only have one wall on our house, so I'm gonna have to do like what you was talking about and get a ladder, because there's not much exposed. But I plan on doing that this week for sure. Now, our dining room wall, though, where there was a leak, we uncovered the struck mortar, which has all been washed off of buildings because they covered in 1880. So that may be a place where I would like to have Ben come over and find them.
Hey, you know. Let me throw this out there too. When you're in a home and you're looking, and you just found one the other day, the enslaved people during the era were very superstitious. And if you look in the ceilings and around different places, you may just see some designs that was put in the home to ward off evil. And people don't know to look for that. Not a whole lot of people do. And the Gullah Geechee people from South Carolina, which a lot of people came this way, you have to wear something blue every day to ward off evil. And I'm going to shut my mouth. One more thing here. I keep saying that, but one more thing. Going back to my grandmother and one of the stories that she would tell to my grandfather, and I thought I had a picture of it, but Pilot Mountain on 52. My grandmother referred to it as Noah's Ark. Yeah, okay. Noah's Ark, got it, okay. But what she was saying was the enslaved people of the time, not that there was any good place to be a slave, but it was better to be in Virginia and above and then Virginia below. Because they looked at those who were coming north to the areas, looked at it as Noah's Ark. It was a new start as being a slave. I'm still a slave, but when it all started down south, and that's what they would threaten the people with, we're going to send you down south or sell you if you don't do right or whatever, because your life expectancy was not very long, especially in the beginning days when they had to make all of this land fertile for rice and all the other things that come. So when I ride by Pilot Mountain, That's part of my heritage, listening. I hear my grandmother speaking in my head every time we ride through. And see, those are the kind of stories that we need to find from people. Also, share those stories so that we can share this history. That's what we're after there. Stop hiding what you know. Stop. I want to hear all the history, good or bad. I can't do anything to fix it other than to teach to make it better.